As we get ready to tell the Advent and Christmas story, I would like to invite you to sing the first verse of O Come All Ye Faithful with me. And just help us get ready. O come all ye faithful, joyful and triumphant, O come ye to Bethlehem. Come and behold him, born the King of angels. O come, let us adore him. O come, let us adore him. O come, let us adore him, Christ the Lord.
Liturgical colors for the cross.
There is a method to the madness. This is the season of Advent, the time when we get ready to celebrate the birth of God's special Son. And the time when we go to Bethlehem to do that. But who will show us the way? This is Mary. And Joseph. Mary and Joseph have a secret. An angel came to them and said, "Don't be afraid. You are going to bear God's special Son, and you will name him Jesus." This is the donkey that Mary rode while she and Joseph were on their way to Bethlehem so that they could be counted by the Roman soldiers. Sometimes Mary rode the donkey, but she was going to have a baby very soon. So sometimes it was kind of hard to ride the donkey. So sometimes she rode the donkey and sometimes she walked. But Mary and Joseph are on the way to Bethlehem, and they can show us the way. This is a shepherd and his sheep. The shepherd was watching his sheep when an angel came to him and said, "Don't be afraid. We have good news for you. For God's special Son is being born in Bethlehem, and you will find him laying in a manger." When the angel first came and the sky got all bright, the shepherd and his friends were afraid. And then the angels started singing and they were afraid even more. But then they heard the words. The angels were singing, about bringing peace to all of God's people. So the shepherd is on the way to Bethlehem to see this child who is going to be born, and he can show us the way. These are the three kings. The three kings were so wise that some people thought they could do magic, and they were called magi. The thing that the three kings knew the most about was the stars. And one day they saw a wild star. It wasn't on their maps of the sky. And it moved, and they became curious, and they started following it. The three kings are following the star to Bethlehem, and they're bringing gifts of gold and frankincense and myrrh to the young child who is going to be born. And the three kings can show us the way to Bethlehem. When Joseph and Mary got to Bethlehem, there wasn't a place for them. So they found a place in a stable. This is the cow that lived in the stable where Joseph and Mary found room. And the cow was kind of surprised to find a baby in the manger where he normally found his breakfast. And now it is Christmas, and we are all in Bethlehem, ready to worship and adore Christ the King. And here is the Christ child in a manger, and his arms are outstretched to you to give you a hug. And Jesus, God's special Son, came to show us how much God loves the world and how much he loves each one of us. Let's sing together. Oh, come, let us adore him. Oh, come, let us adore him. Oh, come, let us adore if you tell this every week someplace during Advent and Christmas, what I did during Advent was all the characters up to Jesus. So I just had them on the road going to Bethlehem. But we didn't, and we would just stop. And then after Christmas then, would do the rest of the story. Move them all up in the circle. And you know, I think you can tell a Christmas story for a lot longer than just that first few days after Christmas. Particularly if you're going weekly. I mean, to just celebrate that. And there's another children's worship program called Godly Play that's also kind of built on this same platform. And Jerome Berryman, who developed that program, he would tell the Christmas story almost every time a new season of the year started or they began a new cycle of stories. He would begin it with the Christmas story. So there could be a way, you know, you wouldn't necessarily have to say this is Advent. You could say, you know, we come together to remember the story of when Jesus was born. You know, and just sort of just use it. It is one of those foundational stories. You know, everyone I think has Christmas memories, and particularly church people have memories of this story. And to be reminded of that throughout the year would not necessarily be a bad thing. And you know, when I started developing this, I was full of plans for just thousands of stories. And the more I worked on it, the more I realized that we really don't need to do that. I had a pastor friend say to me once when I told him I was working on an Alzheimer's worship program, he said, well, you really only need one, right? You know, there's some truth to that in the sense that it's new every time. But
you said many windows into their spiritual sense.
Right, and I do think we need to provide more than one. But I also think that there is value in one of the things that when I worked on this at the Alhambra for a little while is I told the same story for several weeks. I mean, I told the Good Shepherd story, and then I told Zacchaeus well, actually I started with this because I started Advent. So I told this story through Advent and Christmas, and then I told the Good Shepherd story and Zacchaeus through Epiphany and Lent, basically. And then I had Easter, which I'm not showing you today, but I had the Easter story and I showed it. I did it for several weeks after Easter. You know, Eastertide runs for what, 7 weeks? Right. And so Patrice noted the liturgical colors. If you were going to do this in non-Advent, I think you should use a white underlay because, you know, the celebration, Christmas and Easter is white, and then use the tan road. The tan road, like we used for Zacchaeus. But, you know, and one of the reasons for doing the liturgy, and in fact, the Zacchaeus story, Sonia saw that being told during Lent. And so if you tell it during Lent, you can use the purple underlay and say, you know, this is the season of Lent when, you know, and just, I think for particularly people who are in liturgical traditions and who are familiar with the cycles of the church year, it's kind of another way to ground them and to root them if you use that. For people who didn't grow up in those traditions, it's not going to hurt them. You know, but for people who did, it's another one of those kind of grounding things. And using the colors that go with the season. Since it wasn't lit today, I used the green underlay for Zacchaeus. And so, you know, just to keep that in mind when you're doing it, I just think it's a good thing. And I honestly think that We don't need to make things more complicated than they need to be. But I think being thoughtful and careful and cognizant of where we are in the church year is just one of those things that we can bring. And I think it's a way of honoring the people that we're serving.